I made a video not too long ago where I bought a bunch of things that weren't the kind of things I usually buy, and I sold them to Misty Pate, who's a friend of mine, lives here in this town. She also has a YouTube channel. In fact, she's a rock star, but that's neither here nor there. That day I sold her a bunch of things, and then I traded her some things for merchandise that she had. She had this little cabinet. It was missing this top drawer and the bottom drawer. Had a couple other problems, but I bought it from her. I made a drawer here. This drawer is made from a Yankee Clipper seed separator. And in this bottom drawer it says it's got the Winchester logo on it. And the cabinet actually came from Delco Ramey, I think, in Anderson, Indiana, but I put these other two drawers in it. And this is the kind of thing that I love. So if you like this little cabinet, then you like the same kind of things I do, and this is the kind of things that you're going to usually see in my videos. I brought that in here this morning and cleaned it up a little bit. Don't know whether to just go ahead and sell it like that. If you were standing here right now, you could buy that big old box for $20, $25. Clean it up a little more and put some new paint on it. It's going to cause me to have to raise the price to maybe $45. So haven't decided whether I'm going to leave it sitting a while and hope somebody buys it without me painting it, or whether I'll just paint it and put it in my antique booth. That huge box there, that's another example of things that I just dearly love. Old boxes and bins like that. That particular one's probably 7 foot long. It's got dovetail corners. It's got old hardware on it. It's got a divider in it when you raise that slant lid. And that's the kind of thing that you find in the Hard Times Guys videos and in the Hard Times Guys barn for sale. That box there, I actually have a video. One of my earlier videos is dedicated to talking about that box, and that's a fantastic 6-board poplar box. It's I think that front board's like 26 inches. It has old paint with lots of character, and I just love that box. That red cabinet hanging on the wall is an example of a Hard Times original, and there is a video already made and existing where I talk about it and another cabinet like it. That blacksmith sign is something that I painted on an old door. You know, most of the time when I go on a rant, I started something else and I just got rolling, and the next thing you know, I went on a rant, and then I realized that I'd gone on a rant, and I stopped and I apologized. I said something like I didn't intend to go to this place in this video. Then we go on from there. Usually I end the video with something short after that rant. And I started this video to be a short promotional video, and I didn't intend for it to get to where it's about to get. I'm apologizing to you now for going on a rant before I go on a rant, because I'm about to go on a rant. I got up this morning and watched some news, drank some coffee. And the more I watched, the more aggravated I got. And I decided that I couldn't just keep my mouth shut any longer. I'd been trying not to get off on some kind of political vent. And I'm not really going to get off on one today. I'm going to give you an analogy. And you can apply it to your situation or our situation however you want to. But I think it's a fair analogy to make. And I'm just wanting to give you out there, my viewing public, something to think about, without getting this side or that side involved in it. I made a video, I don't know, back in I think, May. So it's been a few months ago. And I went on a rant in that video. Didn't intend to, but it did. It's got, I think that video's the one where the picture, when the videos come up and you get to choose one, it's the picture where I got cracked in the head with a cherry stick and busted my head open. And I think the title of that is, I don't know what the title of it is. Something about the Hard Times guy getting red-faced, I think. But in that video, I talk about how important it is in these videos for me to be me. And I try to hide me, to tell you the truth, some of the times, because I don't want to offend some people out there watching me. And I said in that video, I was through doing that. I was just going to be me, and then I got away from it again. But I'm going to say it again today. I'm just going to be me. I'm going to tell you a story about basketball. I'm going to use basketball. The only antique you're going to see from here on in this video is this 73-year-old antique that's sitting in front of you. I'm going to talk about basketball from, I'm going to say, about 57, 8, 9, somewhere in there, late 50s to about 1970, 71, 72, somewhere in the early 70s. Late 50s to early 70s, let's say about 15 years of basketball. I love basketball. When I was a boy, I played basketball every day. From the time I was introduced to it, and I'm going to say I was about 10 or 11 years old, before I ever even was introduced to the game. I got a yellow basketball for Christmas, and there's a story behind that too, but I'm not going to tell it today. I'm just going to tell you I got a basketball for Christmas and wore that basketball out in about 3 months. And I got another one and another one, and I've had a basketball ever since then. Got one today. It's over in one of them chests. It's one of them good indoor-outdoor balls. Haven't played with it for years and years. I think it's gone flat, but it's a good basketball. But when I was a young boy and a young man, I played basketball every chance I got, year-round. And today kids do that. Kids that are dedicated to basketball today, they play year-round, and there's a way for them to play year-round. There's all kinds of organized ball and places besides school ball for them to play year-round if they want to. Of course, the better you are, the better chance you got to play in something like that. But they got places for kids that aren't real good to play too. But when I was a boy, it was playground ball. There wasn't anything else. Well, the boys club had all-star teams, and they played a few games. They even had a state tournament. One year when I was 11, I think we had a chance to go to the Nationals and like just a few points of winning the state championship and going to the Nationals, but it didn't happen. But we played on the playground. And let me tell you something about that too. In order to play basketball, you have to have rules. And you have to follow the rules within some semblance that you still recognize the game depending on the rules you're following. If you don't, the game isn't any good. You can't play. I mean, if we went out there to play basketball and you got the team out there on the court and one team come out and they was ready to play and the other team come out and they all had aluminum baseball bat in their hands, and it was all right for this team to have aluminum baseball bats but not this team, it wouldn't be a very fair game, because if I hit you up the side of the head with aluminum baseball bat, you're not going to play very good basketball. It's not going to be the same game that we recognize. So in order to play basketball when I was a boy, the people that played had to have a way to we didn't have officials on the playground. You showed up to play, it was the players. There weren't any officials. There wasn't anybody to say, these are the rules that we're going to follow, and me and this guy's going to be the ones that have the whistles and make sure you follow the rules. You had to govern yourself. And there was pretty much an understanding anywhere you went of how the game was going to be. Now, I'm going to give you a rough description of it and how it worked. Most of the time, before a session started, but usually you didn't even have to say this because it depended on what playground you was at, how often you'd play there, where you knew how they do it at that particular place. But there was a system called winners that separated. A kid knew whether he was good enough to play at this playground in prime time or not. So if you was going to go play basketball in prime time with other players, you knew which playground to go to, because if you went over here to this one and you wasn't good enough to play over here, you wouldn't get to play very much. So it went beyond just the rules of the game. People knew their place, knew where they belonged, and they knew how the game was played at a certain place and the quality of the players at that place. If you wanted to move up, then you had to be willing not to play as often, because you went somewhere where you couldn't play as often if you wasn't good enough to play there. I was pretty good as a kid, and it wasn't too long before I was playing with anybody. I could go play anywhere I wanted to. But you had rules, and usually everybody followed the rules. The only thing that got out of line a little bit sometimes was how aggressive you could foul somebody. There were people that played aggressive defense and they fouled a little bit more than you should have been able to. And then so that was one side of the issue. The other side of the issue was you had some weenies that if you got within 5 or 6 feet of them, they was calling a foul on you. And that was the other side of the issue. So you had those two extremes. You had somebody, the offensive players usually calling the fouls, and a lot of times you had somebody on the court that played defense a little bit too aggressively. And you had to do something about that. The other issue was you had somebody that didn't understand the spirit of the game, and he called fouls on the defense a little bit more than he should, and you had to do something about that. And that's how we kept the game going. In my teenage years, high school and beyond to when I was about 25, I could play basketball anywhere I wanted to, and did, all the time. I was ready to play every day. Played hours on end. And in that group that I played with, there was one particular person who was really aggressive about rules. And then when I said there was someone that was overly aggressive about the fouling, I said something had to be done about that. And what usually was done about that was everybody else got a little bit more aggressive. And we had this saying, no blood, no foul. If you was in a no blood, no foul game, it wasn't for the weak-hearted. You knew the defense was going to be pretty aggressive. But this one guy, and he was older than most of the other players. I'm going to say when I first encountered him, I was about 14 or 15, and he was probably in his early 30s, maybe middle 30s. And he wasn't a really good basketball player, but he's a fairly good athlete, and he was a grown man playing with mostly boys. You know, some of the high school graduates and early college players that were coming around in the summertime, they weren't quite as old as him, but some of them were men like him. But most of us were high school boys, young college-age boys. And he was a grown, filled-out, stocky, muscular man who would just flat knock you down on the asphalt. I mean, knock the snot out of you. You get up with blood on your knees and your elbows. And so the no blood, no foul rule, it was always kind of rough around him, but he just could be rougher than everybody else, or he was willing to be rougher than everybody else, and he almost always played that way. And I didn't like to play with him. And to tell you the truth, I don't know anybody in that whole realm of playing basketball on the playground in those years that I'm talking about, that 15-year span. I don't know anybody that liked to play with him, but he played all the time, and his team usually had a little bit of an advantage because of the way he played, because it was hard to score if he was out there amongst you. But for it to be a good game, that couldn't get too far out of hand. And the first line of defense for something like that was somebody got to handling you too rough and you didn't like it. You said, hey, wait a minute. Basketball's not played like this. If you're going to be like that, then we're going to have a problem. We're going to have to stop the game and settle this. And that sometimes took care of it. Sometimes it didn't. Sometimes things escalated into you made a speech like that, and the next thing you know, somebody hit you right in the nose or right in the mouth. That happened to me more than once. And then there was a scuffle and maybe a few punches thrown and some kicking and gouging. And it got settled, and then everybody said, hey guys, we got to take care of this. And the players and the ones on the sideline said, this is what we're going to do. It's going to change. It's going to be like this. Everybody respected that. And we went on then and played. But with this guy, it came to that almost every time, and people didn't like to escalate it to that because he was a tough guy. He was a bully, and he was bigger and strong. He wasn't taller, but he was bigger and stronger and meaner than most of the players. So what it usually took where he was concerned was a consensus effort. I'm going to stop this discussion for a minute, and I'm going to say I told you this was going to be an analogy. An analogy is where you illustrate something, tell a story. It's kind of like a parable. You tell a story that once you get the concept of it, you can apply it to other situations. And I want you to take this basketball analogy, and here's how I want you to apply it. These players on these dirt courts and asphalt courts and gravel courts that we played on when I was a youngster. I think one of them was even concrete. When we played on those courts, think of these players as not basketball players, but world leaders. The president and the vice president, senators, congressmen and women, governors and mayors of major cities. The people that are in control of what's going on in our country, in our states, in our communities. Think of these players as those people. And think about the game of basketball as life in these United States. We played basketball under the system, even with the bullies that occasionally existed. In my young man's lifetime, like I said, I played about every day for a long time. Loved the game. And we managed to do that with no rules and no officials other than the rules we all understood and our own officiating. Why could that happen? And I said once in a while there was somebody that always ignored the rules. There was somebody that always tried to be a bully. We had one guy, I could tell you what his name was, and there's a lot of people that might watch this video if you're in Bedford, Indiana, that's my age and older than me, know exactly, they know who I'm talking about without me even saying his name. I could tell you his name right now. I don't know whether he's even still alive or not. But even with that going on, and it wasn't just him either, I mean, there's, you know how it gets rowdy when there's a crowd and no law enforcement. Even with that going on, we managed to play basketball and enjoy it, and I'm going to tell you why we managed to do that. The people out there playing at that level, at that frequency, loved basketball. Some of them were more aggressive about winning and losing than others. Some of them took the game more seriously than others, but they all loved the game. And the game couldn't be the game if you let that kind of thing go on. And so as a group, who all of it didn't matter when you showed up at the court to play, you weren't a shirt or a skin. The team that wore their shirts and the team that wore their, that's how you knew who was on your team. When you showed up that day, you were a player, a potential player, and you got divided into teams by a system called winners, and you played against each other, and the guys that won the most played the most because the winners played again and again and again if they kept winning. So there was an incentive to win. There was a reason to compete and compete hard and take every advantage you could. But the overall group loved basketball. And to have basketball, there had to be an agreement that we're going to play according to the rules. And it wasn't me against him or us against them. It was those of us who loved basketball saying, we're not going to put up with this from you or anybody. Because the game, not this game we're playing right now where you're ahead 14-12, not this game, the game of basketball is more important than any single game, than any single day. And we love it enough to take that position collectively and govern ourselves for what? For the good of the game. And if we couldn't do that, we couldn't have the game. I don't know whether that still goes on today or not. There's so many places to play where you got an official, and there's so many people that think you can't play without officials. Even though I never knew anybody that liked one, my wife hates all of them. She thinks they're all bad. But we played because we loved the game, and we played according to the rules because without the rules it wasn't the game we loved. And what I want to see happen in our country is I want to see our leaders in our communities, in our state, and in our nation act like they love the country and the people in it. And it's not we and they. It's us. And our nation is at stake because it's not like that right now. It's us and them. And there are no rules. Winning is the only important thing. If we get our way, that's all that counts. It don't matter to people. The decisions we make on the basis of what's best for our party. The decisions we make are made on the basis of what's best for me getting elected again. What's best for these people in this district who are my party getting elected again. What's best for this over here or this over here, or these people that vote for us And those people that vote for them are vile and detestable. That's what they think. That's how they act on both sides. And if it stays like that and gets worse from where it is today, see how we can have a country. It's not as bad as it can get yet. You know, one time in the history of our country, that's another thing that one side don't like. They don't like to look back at history. They want to change it. They want to say it's not what really happened. But one time in the history of our country, we had enough of a disagreement amongst ourselves that we killed each other. We had a civil war, and more Americans died in that war than any other war we ever fought. So we're not there yet. But don't think we can't go there, because I've seen it this year where people in the street were willing to kill somebody else, hurt somebody else, destroy somebody else. And that somebody else was an American just like them. I warned you, I was going to go on a rant. And I got those of you out there that are listening to this, I mean, a lot of people I don't know who listens to my videos and who don't. I know my daughter does, one of my daughters does, my sister does, a few other people, pretty regular viewers of my video. And some of them like different aspects of them. I don't think any of them like this aspect of them. But I got friends, and I've said this before in my videos. My faith, my family, and my friends are the three most important things to me in this life, and in that order. And I got family, a few, and friends, a lot of them, that are on the other side of this issue than where I am. When it comes down to let's discuss this issue and this issue and this issue, and where the party that I support and where the people that I support stand on these things and these things. But surely to God, I got friends. My friends, I don't know any of them that have lost their mind totally, can't stop and look at things with common sense, and can't see that where we're at and where we're going right now isn't good for anybody. Once it gets to where there's no rules, it's bad for all of us. Sometimes it helps to have a champion, but a champion isn't really the total answer. The situation that I described, I'm going to tell you one more little short story. I hope it's short. Then I'm going to wrap this up. Sometimes a champion can fix things, but usually the champion only fixes things that day or when he is there to be the champion. What it really takes is a consensus among all of us that we love the game enough to take care of the game for the sake of the game. We love our country enough to take care of the country for the sake of our country. I was about 14 or 15, and this person, we used to play ball on an asphalt parking lot. I had 4 goals on it. They all faced a different direction, east, west, north, and south. Caddy corner across the corner was a DX service station, had a big red machine sitting on outside where you went and paid for your gas. It was sitting there on the front of this thing, had a pop machine in it that had big reds in it. They were ice cold, and we'd play ball a while, and then we'd go over and drink a big red, and then we'd come back and play ball some more. That was the primo place in about 19 62, maybe 63. This fella's name was Denny. Stocky, muscular young man. Been in the service, and I'm not sure that he had just gotten out of the service or he was home on furlough or what. I think he'd just gotten out of the service. And he liked to play basketball. He come found a game, and he found this game that we played all the time, and he showed up in it. And he was just a little bit older than most of the rest of us. He had gotten out of school and went to the service and did his time and got out of the service. Now he was back in Lawrence County. I think he actually was originally from Mitchell, but I'm not sure. He was back, and he went and found a basketball game. And he found a game we played in a lot. He started showing up on a regular basis. I don't know, second or third time he played with us. This other fellow that I was talking about, which was the bully that played in the same game a lot, he was there, and he was doing his usual thing. And I was about 14 or 15. And he knocked me about 15 feet, and I went sprawling across the asphalt and the gravel and got up with, like I said, blood on my elbows, blood on my knees. Had a big old rock stuck in my hand right there. And wasn't any match for this guy at all, but here I come. That day I couldn't tolerate what just had happened. And I started for the guy, and he's standing there waiting for me. But this fella named Denny, he said, "Hold up, little man." That's what he called me. He called me little man. And he just walked up to this guy, and he just grabbed him by the throat, just like that. And he backed him up against these 4 basketball goals were on supports made out of telephone poles, and they were big ones, about that big around, 4 of them in the ground, and then they went up, and each goal stuck out 10 or 12 feet from either side from these massive telephone poles. Looked like a train trestle with basketball goals around it. And he got this guy by the throat, he backed him up against that, and he just, with one hand, lifted him up off the ground and held him back against one of those telephone poles. And he said, "We're playing basketball here. And what you just did to my little man ain't going to happen again. Do you understand?" And he set the guy down and released his grip. And he didn't say anything, and he tightened his grip again and lifted him back up off the ground. He said, "I asked you, do you understand?" And he set him back down. He couldn't talk, but he understood. And, that day we had a champion. And that day the champion was there, and that day the game went on normally without bullying. But like I said, for the game, in real life, you can have a champion temporarily, but it really takes everybody working together. And that's what I'm hoping can happen in our country, because some of the things that are going on now, we can't just let the person that's willing to violate the rules and traditions the most in order to win ruin the country we all love to win today or next year or 5 years from now or 4 years ago, whatever it is. Do you see what I'm saying? Okay, this little short promo video might end up still being a little short promo video. I might throw this last part completely away. I haven't decided yet what I'm going to do. I'm going to look at it and see what I think. But my morning coffee and what's in the news just aggravated me to the point I had to get this said. And I think I'm going to put it out there. If you don't like it, you can turn it off. You can say you don't like it. Do whatever you want to. what I hope you do is you say, you subscribe to my videos, you push the like button, say you liked it, and we go on. You watch my videos from now on. Next time I'm going to try to get back to being the hard times guy again, but every once in a while I just have to say what I'm thinking, and today I got off on that track and said what I'm thinking. Until the next time, I'm a hard times guy. Have a good day.